Hello, world schooling families. Do you wish you had more opportunities to connect with others who understand the unique joys and challenges of traveling and learning on the go? Hi, I'm Susie, and I'm excited to invite you to a special virtual World Schoolers meetup happening Friday, August 8th at 3 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. This is a chance for parents and kids alike to meet, share, and build community. We'll start with warm introductions, then move into small breakout groups to foster deeper connections. We'll finish up with a big group gathering, and the best part is you can join us for the whole hour or just pop in when it works for you and your family. To join this wonderful gathering, check the show notes, look for upcoming events on my website, or grab a calendar link directly from my Instagram bio. Can't wait to see you there. Also, if you're in Denver, Colorado, join us for the in-person World Schoolers Picnic on September 28th from 12 to 3. Look forward to seeing you. Now let's get on to the episode. Welcome to the Wander, World School, and Slow Family Travel podcast. Today I'm joined by Ginny Conforti. Welcome to the show. Please tell me more about you and your family.
Hey, I'm super excited. This is my first podcast. I've lived in Chicago for 20 years, but I actually grew up on a farm in Iowa. For the past decade, Sayulita, Mexico has become a second home to our family. We're on track to spend about 4 months there this year. So we home base both out of Chicago and out of Sayulita. 2 years ago, my now 6-year-old daughter started attending outdoor school in Sayulita. I always say where you choose to educate your children is also a piece of where you're rooted. So I think that's when it really became real to my husband and myself that we were developing a second home base. And then family-wise, I have a 6-year-old daughter named Arya, my husband Greg, and then I am a proud bonus mom to 3 incredible kiddos from my husband's previous marriage. I've been in their lives full-time for the past 14 years. The older 2 are now adults, but Sophia is a senior in high school this year. So I've had a lot of experience raising kids across all seasons of life. When I had Arya, I used to joke I'm raising kids backwards because I skipped the birth to 3 years. Sophia was 3 when I came into her life. And then I had Arya and then got the birth to age 3 under my belt.
Thank you for sharing. You were involved in education a lot. Tell me about those opportunities.
Oh, I've always been a teacher, oldest of 5 kids. I went into elementary education and have taught in some form over the last 25 years. Most recently, the last 5 years, I left Chicago Public Schools to open my own brick and mortar. There's really nothing quite like it in Chicago, at least. It was a Montessori play space for birth to 5 years old. And then we also ran after school programming, day off school camps. I also rented out space to yoga teachers, baby music teachers. It was a community hub, but I closed that last summer. And so for the past year, I've been exploring opportunities, just how I'm going to pivot myself and continue to, explore educational opportunities for my daughter, but also inspire other people through my work, trying to figure out where my heart is aligned most. Last week, I hosted a week-long World School pop-up here in Chicago, and that was in collaboration with World School Pop-Up Hub. I know Rachel Carlson, she's fairly well known in the World School communities, so I proposed to host here in Chicago, and that was phenomenal. But I also still have deep roots and connections here with the business owners that formerly worked at my learning center. This morning, I was teaching a preschool in the park class. Last month, I did a read aloud, and we made mini flower arrangements for a Mother's Day themed class. So yeah, I'm just exploring how I can use my talents here, both locally and then when we travel. My brick and mortar was called Harmony Learning Center, and I rebranded and it's called Harmony Learning Adventures. And Harmony Learning Adventures is just my way of continuing to do the work that I started here in Chicago at my brick and mortar, but incorporating different ways that I've evolved and that our family has evolved over the last 6 years. I'm now branching out and becoming a connector, I guess, really around the world.
And that provides opportunities when you take something online to be able to spend time in Mexico a couple months out of the year. And I should add, we met back in March at the Sevilla pop-up hub that I hosted, and you were spending time in France with family. So it sounds like you really like to have that flexible lifestyle of being able to travel where you want, spend time where you want in your second home in Mexico. It's great to develop something that you can take with you.
Absolutely.
I'd like to step back though and start with what one of your earliest travel memories might be.
Like I mentioned, I'm the oldest of 5. So whenever we traveled by car mostly due to budget constraints. And when I was 7, my parents bought me my first flight. It was a 2-hour flight from Iowa to Denver, where my mom's sister, my aunt, lived. And I remember it very vividly, getting on the plane. It must have been the summer after 2nd grade. And getting on the plane alone, sitting in the window seat and staring out at the clouds. And I just remember feeling so grown up, like I was taking this flight on my own. And of course, I'm sure I had some flight attendant to assist me. But in my mind, I was traveling solo, and it was my first flight, and it really stuck with me. It just became a core memory. I had like maybe the wanderlust or the just the wonder of travel for the first time at such a young age.
And how did those experiences and your upbringing shape your travel philosophies as an adult?
Growing up on a farm, I developed early on a deep internal respect for learning outside of the classroom. We were free range kids before there was even a word for free range. But I realized that travel didn't need to be fancy. It was full of connection. It didn't really matter where we were staying or how we were getting there. It was just about connecting to people and places that were different from our norm. My family always supported and encouraged travel as a way to understand ourselves and the world around us and the people around us. And then in college, I had the opportunity to study abroad. I was the first group to head to Rome, Italy, on a pilot program, a student teaching at the International School of Rome. And my grandma from my other side, my dad's mom, was born and raised in Tuscany. So I feel like my life came full circle at that point. I was, 21 years old. That was a super special trip to me because it was not only my first adventure into European travel, but also, in a way, returning to my roots and really understanding a part of who I was culturally in Italy. So I think that's a lot of why I do what I do now, both with my daughter and also in my business, is continuing that piece of who I am and how travel has shaped me.
You've spent time in Mexico and really developed a connection with the community there and time with family in France. What led you to decide to go to Mexico for the first time?
The time in Mexico, that derived organically. My husband and I, when we were dating, my parents had a timeshare down in Nueva Vallarta, and he's more of a vacationer. He would do his law conventions, and then he'd take his 2 weeks of vacation every year and go to a nice resort. And so we ended up in Nueva Vallarta, and we were there for 2 or 3 days. And I said to him, I've had enough of this place. He looked at me because it was luxurious and beautiful. Our neighbor had suggested Sayulita. It's a surfing and fishing village about 40 minutes away. We ended up going there for a day trip, booking a hotel for the night. We loved it so much. And then consistently booking like another 3 or 4 nights, to the point where our timeshare hotel, they called us and said, "We're really concerned. Where are you guys? Like, there's no charges on your hotel bill. Are you guys okay?" And we were absolutely more than okay, having the time of our lives in this community. That's really when Mexico stole my heart, is when we really saw the authenticity, the culture, the mix in this particular village of expats and locals, and the energy of all of that. And then we ended up getting married there 11 years ago. So then that created new memories, right? We had the entire extended family down there, really became truly our home away from home. So that inspired my love of Mexico. And then this most recent trip to Paris, my only sister, that's a year younger than me, she's lived in Paris for 8 years and has two kids similar in age to my daughter. She called me and asked me if I could come over. And because I had closed my brick and mortar, I had some more lifestyle freedom. So we went with my husband's blessings, and he said, like, go have a great time, and I'll hold down the fort here with Sophia. A lot of our travel decisions have been organic.
There are plans to spend even more time in Mexico. It sounds like you're building a place there to spend more time.
We bought a condo, which should be finished in the next year. I'm also excited to explore potential partnerships with local business owners and see how I might be able to bring my talents and services to traveling families. There is a portion of the population that's transient down there, but there's also a full-time group. This year's information gathering, I definitely want to go down there with new eyes and explore what are the needs and how can I really complement or support some already great programs or activities that are already happening down there.
You've talked a little bit about your daughter Aria, and she was zipping around her scooter back in March around Sevilla. What are
Yeah.
your kids' thoughts around traveling?
Well, Sophia, our teenager, is currently in Belize. She saw that opportunity for her senior trip. I think there were only 8 kids from her huge high school here in Chicago going. And I was so proud and inspired that she not only wanted to go, but said, like, hey, it has kind of a big price tag. So she has a job as a hostess at a local restaurant here. She's like, I'll pay half if you pay half. It wasn't so much about the financial piece. It was that she was so committed that she wanted to spend her own paycheck to get there. So that's been super fun to see passion for traveling live out through the kids. And Aria really has been traveling internationally since she was 8 weeks old. So for her, this rhythm of movement in between places it's her normal. She hasn't had traditional schooling here in Chicago. So it's been a little easier to uproot her because I'm not asking her to leave a community or exit kindergarten in the middle of the year and say goodbye to her teacher and friends. So I think part of the fluidity in how we manage our travels, I think that helps her be more at ease with moving from place to place. But I will say, every time we talk about becoming more fully unrooted from Chicago, there's instant tears. I don't know if it's necessarily to the people here. I mean, she does have friends and connections from my learning center, but I think it's just to her, this is home. I think about when I took off for college and left my hometown and those emotions, and maybe they don't hit you all at once, but there's this unraveling of I'm no longer home. For her, I was curious, how does she identify her home? And she has a core group of friends that she counts on in Mexico, and that's kind of like her social home. But I think as a physical location, and a lot of her core memories are in Chicago. So it's just been interesting to hold space and navigate those big feelings. There is like a tinge of guilt, but I've worked through a lot of that myself and just realized that we can have all these things, but we can't have everything at the same time. So we can be rooted in a place, but then we might miss out on going to live with her niece and nephew for 3 months in France. And I think the more she processes that, the more she realizes that too. So there's pieces of her that when we're in one place, she misses the people or the memories of another. And I don't think that that's something that can be avoided. I think it's the price we pay for this gift of growth and travel. So even though sometimes it's hard to see her processing it, I think at the end of the day, it is for her greater understanding and growth. And so I think in general, she's at peace with the lifestyle right now. I am curious to see how it will play out like in her adolescent years and to see how things go for us and how much we end up home basing and how much we end up free ranging. It's nice that we can take her feedback and actually pivot if we need to.
I've had a lot of those similar feelings around home base and what is home for children, especially if we're choosing to travel a lot. Even though my children think of Colorado as home, in the last 2 years, we've actually spent more time in Spain. So it's interesting how that perception of home evolves and how deeply rooted it can be and the feelings to process that. Mine are pretty easygoing, but that could also change. So
Yeah.
leaving space for that is important.
I've been through the adolescent years already with the other kids, but I haven't been through that time where they're uprooted. All of my older kids, they've been able to walk down the street and get a job at a local restaurant. Or, we were able to have like the guinea pig or whatever. Like we always traveled, so we could just never have a dog. But, at least we could do a fish or a guinea pig. Like now we can barely do a plant, right? Like we have to like figure out who's going to care for the plant when we're in the other country. It'll just depend on the kind of kid she is with how she processes them and what she thinks she wants. So that'll be an adventure.
You've touched on some of your philosophies around schooling and education. Can you share a little more about what approach you've taken so far with Aria and some of those opportunities that she's taken part of in Sayulita?
We're taking a really flexible child led approach. The older three were in the traditional public school system here in Chicago. For the elementary years, they did a Montessori hybrid and also International Baccalaureate. So there were some pieces of it that maybe weren't quite traditional public. And we've seen the results of that. And I'm by no means anti public education. I just want with Aria, because we can explore a different way, I want to take that opportunity. When we're here in Chicago, I homeschool her. It's pretty fluid. I would say a couple hours a day, maybe 3 days a week, which if I would have heard myself saying this when she was born, I would never have believed it because I taught in the structured classrooms and they go to school for X amount of hours a day. But I think through my work at Harmony and then through my observations of her, right now she's wrapped up what would be considered her kindergarten year here in the US. And I think more and more I want to give her more freedom than less when it comes to education. If we need to, or if something's not feeling right, I can always do more structure and we can start looking on OutSchool. But for now, when we're in Chicago, at least, I do light homeschooling and then the rest is really life schooling, headed to the local museums or riding on the train, taking a weekly music class, taking piano and soaking up the culture wherever we are. It's something else that gives me peace of mind is having what I feel is kind of a balance in education. So then when she goes to Mexico, she's taught by a teacher that's not me. She has curriculum as a more traditional approach. I homeschool her with a combination of alternative and Montessori methods, but she does get 3 to 4 months with a different culture in a bilingual classroom and maybe different approaches. The more exposure she can have to different styles, pedagogies, different types of education, the better eventually that will be for me to determine what's the best fit for her. For the 3 months we were in Europe, it was all pretty much life schooling. And she lived with my nephew he's 6 months older than her, and he's in a traditional school there in France. The French school system is known for being rigid and traditional. And he was reading and she was showing some interest, but she really just turned the corner through observing him. So he was into like the Dogman graphic novels. As soon as we got back to the States, she started reading a similar graphic novel series. And I had given her some instruction in phonemic awareness and some of the basic phonics principles, but it was really cool to see that she was just like on her own, ready to read. I think we'll plan on being pretty fluid with it until there's a reason not to be.
It's amazing how reading can just click sometimes with some kids.
Yeah.
My oldest loves those Dog Man, and I think they're like kind of
Yeah.
like weird, of course, but
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah. I read them, like,
whatever.
for
If you're
bedtime, and they're out there, but they like them.
I think it's also important to discuss the realities of long term travel and choosing to live outside of the US for longer periods of time. What are some of those challenges or struggles?
My husband is pretty much a traditionalist in terms of he's been at the same law firm for 35 years. Before he met me, he was taking his 2 weeks of vacation. And so just getting him on board with this new mentality of we can function away from our home base. But for us, especially Via being almost 18 and starting her senior year and being very much rooted here in Chicago, like for us, that means splitting our family from time to time. Like Aria and I went to Paris to go travel. So we've really had to understand that our time together is really quality versus quantity for the short term. He's actually 17 years older than me. So he's gearing up for semi retirement and soon retirement. So for us, this model mostly works for us because it's temporary, right? We know that in the next couple years, he'll have some more lifestyle freedom. But I will say when we were over in Paris, it was hard to stay connected with the time change and checking in and just staying connected with Arya being such a young age. A lot of the connection between parent and child is at the park or throwing the football or seeing the art exhibition. So I think he felt left out of that. But then now, come full circle, we're back in Chicago and he's joining us every day for the Worldschool pop up and he's taking her across the street to Grant Park to throw the football. So I think it is where you put your time and your intention. But that was challenging. And then there was another month that was very challenging for us. I was in Mexico 2 years ago with Aria. And she and I had gone a month early. Greg was planning to come and be there for 2 to 3 months in the winter. But we went down because her school down there started in October. So we went down a month early, and our expat friends that we've made down there, they call it like our Mexi-cution. Everyone goes through this. Anyone that fully commits to a culture and a language and a country and it like dives in, like you're going to be tested. It's just another culture and another language. Mexico is going to ask you, how much do you love me? So we were down there, and within the course of that month, I was solo parenting with her, and she had a severe allergic reaction to mosquitoes. She was stung by a bee. She was bitten by a dog that required a medical care. She had parasites. There was a rash at her school, blood taken because they thought the mosquito issue could be dengue. She had a super high fever. So finally I called Greg, and I'm pretty tough in terms of roll with the punches, lean on your community. And so I never asked him to come. That's just not. But he just said, her fever's pretty high. If you need to take her to the hospital in Mexico, I want to be there. She's 4 years old. So he came down. And the day after he landed, we were under a hurricane warning and had no cell service. And I think the more people I talk to that do this lifestyle, there will inevitably be a string of situations that might make you question your choices. But we pulled through. We learned a lot about these things that some of them are commonplace down there. Okay? And then the cherry on top is he was trying to like head back to the States and realized that when he had come down, there was some issue with his immigration. We had to cancel his flight and go to immigration and work on his permanent immigration status. So there's always that too, the legalities. And I'm sure I see you nodding your head, and that's one of the parts of the world school community. You just feel so seen and heard on a level that only someone that has experienced something like this can relate to.
That sounds like quite the adventure.
Oh,
You're right. If you can get through that, I feel like anything is possible. Well, you have been back since without as many hiccups. So you got that out of the way, let's hope.
It
Thanks.
builds resilience and it just builds empathy. It also is a lesson in living in the tropics. Like it's a part of it. So wherever you are in the world, in Chicago, we have blizzards, right? We get snowed in, school gets canceled. But to us, that's very normal. I guess it's a comfortable discomfort. But when you're traveling, it's an unknown, uncomfortable discomfort. And then you have the language barrier on top of it. Travel is not without its issues, but I definitely think even through all of that, it's absolutely worth it. The lessons that it teaches and those experiences. And that's the word we use a lot. Susie is just like,
Mhm.
it's an adventure. And we also can't expect these other places to be America. They just aren't, and they aren't, and they shouldn't be. They are their own beautiful place in their entirety. So, with all of their challenges and all of their beauty, it's still real life.
Yes, we are in it for the highs and the lows.
Absolutely.
But to finish on a positive note, what are some wins and joys that you're experiencing right now?
Hosting the Worldschool pop up here in Chicago gave me a renewed love for this city. And to see people on fire for the energy of this city, all the opportunities that exist like right outside our door, the joy that the families were having with their children and the connection that they were having. I truly packed the itinerary for Chicago. Chicago in the summer is chock full of free and low cost, incredible events. So it rekindled my love for this city. And I think having my husband Greg join and talk to um, other parents from all stages of life, and as you near retirement, finances are central to your decision, right? So, like, how much longer do I need to stay before I can retire? Are we going to have enough to travel on to live on? And added to that, he has a 6-year-old. That being said, he was able to talk to younger families. There was a family that was traveling around the US in like their camper van with their 9-year-old, and they had like worked for years to gain this lifestyle freedom. And so to watch Greg, who's, almost 63, talking to this couple that are 28 and have this beautiful 9-year-old daughter and watching her play with my daughter. But it was really beautiful to hear how they might be in two different seasons of life, but they shared similar like values, concerns, questions, and to have a space for that dialogue that wasn't between my husband, myself, and like something I saw on YouTube. Like, I think that's a real positive that's come out of the last few weeks. This last year has been pretty travel heavy with me not being tethered in the same way to Chicago. I'm so surprised at how much my perspective has shifted because travel has been so much a part of my life and who I am. There's this tendency to find myself as more of a well traveled person. But I will say, living over in Europe for 90 days and then living in Mexico 2 months prior to that, it changed me at my core in a different way than travel ever has. I think this idea of slow travel, the meaningfulness in the everyday activities. So Arya going to her art class on Wednesdays and the kids are playing with local kids. The part of me that's changed is that the world just suddenly became so much smaller in the best way. So the fact that you and I are talking, but we have this connection because our kids played with each other in the streets of Sevilla, and there are threads of our stories that are weaved together and similar. The world just is so much smaller. I grew up in a very small town where everyone knew everyone and everyone else's business. I think for a good part of my life, I wanted to escape that. And what I'm realizing now is that connection, being known and knowing others, that can exist wherever we are in the world.
That is really beautiful. That's amazing, those realizations and
Mhm.
how we are all connected in many ways. And I asked you a lot of questions about your time in Mexico because Sayulita or other parts of Mexico are on my list. So it's great that we can learn from each other too about how to
Absolutely.
adapt. So maybe it's not so much of a Mexi-cution for new people.
Absolutely, yes.
And you have an upcoming travel opportunity when you're back in Mexico this winter.
I'm currently working on coordinating a week-long World School hub in Sayulita this winter. I'm trying to decide honestly. I just love the World School pop-up hub, and I love my experience here in Chicago. So I'm trying to decide if we should do a collab with them again, or if I would like to integrate more with local businesses. In either case, the plan is to do some sort of pop-up hub for traveling families or local. I was surprised in Chicago. I had two local families that knew me through my work. I want to offer that in the winter. So I will be promoting that on my website and my Instagram. So it's harmony.learning.adventures is my handle on Instagram. And then my website is harmonylearn.com. And I'm just super excited to figure out what I can create in Sayulita. Another thing I'm excited about too is, well, being on this podcast and connecting with other World School families. If there are other people that are in their information gathering phase of like, how are we going to do life? Or maybe you have a business that is in a similar vein that you can use your time and talent to organize events for traveling families. I would love to connect. And so that's another part of what I'm doing in Sayulita is hopefully connecting virtually and in person with other families down there.
Well, that's so exciting. I imagine it would be easier to connect with some of the businesses once you are down there. Having paid attention to some of the hubs that are popping up, there's some that pop up and then move away, but then there are some that are pretty regular. And that does offer families a chance who are learning and planning ahead to think, wait, that's on my radar. I'm not traveling this winter, but probably next, and start getting connected. So I can see how those hubs can grow over time if there's some consistency to it. Well, this has been so lovely to hear more about you, your family travels, your recent journeys. Yeah, I'll make sure to link everything in the show notes so people can connect with you.
Thank you for this opportunity, Susie, and I hope our paths cross. I'm sure they'll cross virtually again, but I would love to cross paths in person, which is just another beautiful thing that presents itself with World Schooling. So I'll be listening to your podcast and following your adventures.